Well, here we go again.
I know. Welcome to another edition of Day Drinking with John and Rory.
It's been a long time since we've done one of these.
Well, it's not been a long time since we've been doing any day drinking. That
Well,
was
fair
yesterday,
enough,
actually,
yeah.
but it's been a while since we've done a tasting with you all.
And
so.
this is for the loyal of the loyal here. This is for our Frog Fellows. We are excited to be with you all. We'll tell you the vast audience we have assembled here. Scott's running the controls, and Jessica is behind the scenes making everything happen. And we got Megan here keeping track of you guys. We want you to announce that you're online, and let all you other Frog Fellows know that you're online through your chat function. Is that how they do it, Megan? Megan's here. We think maybe Nathan and Nick are probably tuned in, waiting to hear everything. It's a beautiful.
They're hanging on our every word.
They're hanging on our every words. It is a beautiful day in the Napa Valley.
It absolutely is. It's nice and warm and sunny here, and beautiful cover. All the cover crop is in bloom right now, so we're
So
really.
what are you doing right now in the vineyard? You
We
just
are
finished pruning, right?
We are busy. Yeah, we just finished pruning yesterday, actually, which is pretty exciting. Pruning, obviously, the big event in the early season. We started just the week after New Year's, and we've been pruning steadily every week. And just finished up the youngest block of Cabernet at Rossi. Always gets pruned last, and so.
I think we have a picture of the pruning as but I think we need a fresh picture. These are a couple guys that have already retired, I think, in this
absolutely.
picture. But,
so it's you see here in this
photo. Is that
photo.
Francisco?
That's Francisco,
Yeah.
Mister. One of the guys who actually taught me how to prune, and so that's them pruning some Cabernet. This is a few years ago, but pruning obviously kind of the setup for the rest of the year. It's extremely important part of the year. It really sets the tone, sets the vigor for the vines. The way that we prune is pretty time consuming. There's a reason it takes us nearly 3 months to finish all of our pruning. It's because we have a pretty painstaking, you can see Francisco in this photo is cleaning a cane. And so that cane is gonna be the source of a lot of the fruit for that Cabernet vine this year. Every single vine is individually tailored to have the proper number of canes that suits its particular site.
How long are we going to talk about pruning? I'm getting thirsty.
As long as I want.
Okay.
So shut up, all right? Jesus.
Oh
Some things never change. This guy won't stop interrupting me.
Well, you give me a glass of wine.
Well, get us a glass of wine.
Well, are we ready to try a little rosé? Yeah,
I think so. Let's get something in our glass. I think. You gotta.
How do you open this?
No, you didn't read the instructions. Come on, the instructions right there.
Oh, open other end.
Come on. Let me show you how it's done here.
That's why we put that warning on there.
It's really it's led to some tragic accidents when we used to not include it.
I love the pop of the twist top now. What are you guys thinking of these screw caps on the rosé and the Sauvignon Blanc now? I'm loving them, man. At home, it makes it way too easy to get into this.
It's slightly dangerous because it just makes it a little too easy.
Here's to you guys. Thanks for joining us today. Yeah, and get a glass of wine out there yourselves. We have to do that. And you were saying about pruning? In conclusion.
And in conclusion. Anyway, pruning, extremely exciting, extremely skilled part of the year. Very meditative. And there's a reason we have a permanent crew in our vineyard. It's because these guys are the best, and it's actually difficult to do. We're also starting to mow down cover crop. We're starting to actually crimp some of our cover crop.
Well, are you actually mowing, or are you just breaking down the mower? Because I know you've had to
We've broken the mower 3 times this year already, and it's still
every
early.
year.
Oh, every year, yeah.
It sits there for 11 months to break down in the 1 week that you need it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But this is also a crucial time of year for making sure that starting to return the cover crop into the soil. This cover crop's grown all winter. Right now, everything's in bloom. All the daikon, all the oats and peas and vetch and fava beans, triticale wheat. All the different cover crops that we plant that are suited to every different vineyard. So we have about 8 different blends that we sort around all of our different blocks, depending on what they need. What you're seeing in the photo here is the result of a roller crimper. So it's one way of flattening the cover crop, starting to incorporate the cover crop is it's essentially just a big steel drum that's super heavy, and it flattens it and rolls it and actually crimps or breaks the stems of the cover crop as it goes along.
So a lot of people know about the mustard too, and we've had a good mustard year, really.
We've had a great mustard year. Mustard is not something that we plant typically. There is a type of mustard that we do plant that's a little bit different, but most of the mustard that you see, if you come here to the winery and you see the big blooms of yellow flowers. That's actually all, it's not a native
Self-seeding.
plant, but it is all self-seeding. It's all voluntary. And that's,
Makes
just
for a
some,
spectacular.
it's
spring, yeah.
every February you get through the cold winter and it kind of starts to bloom everywhere. And that's a really nice part of the spring.
So we've just opened back up at the winery, and it's so exciting to have guests here again now. And you'll probably see a few wander by in the back of us here. The winery's open today, and we've got a number of families out, and it is. Oh my gosh, are we all going to make it through this thing? I hope so. It's been wild.
Yeah.
It's been wild, and
But
we
we're
hope
very
all you
excited
and your
about
families
getting
get
back open and starting to welcome people back here to the winery. For us, it's a big part of who we are, is being able to welcome people into the winery and share wines with them. And it's been obviously a bit strange the last year, so we're getting excited about hopefully welcoming all of you back in. Let's talk about the rosé a little
Yeah,
bit.
we should, because the wines we're tasting today are the three wines that you received in your most recent Frogfellow shipment. This beautiful rosé that we're going to talk about, and then we'll dive into a little bit of the special block, Molinari Zinfandel.
And then talk a little bit about the Merlot.
And then finish up with some Merlot. Sounds like a good day. Man.
Yeah,
It sounds like a good
absolutely.
day.
So the rosé.
Now, can you admire the color of the rosé for me just a little bit this year?
Absolutely.
Because, I put a little effort into
You
this.
did put a little effort into this.
Yeah.
My dad is kind of the color commentator, basically, when it comes to.
Oh, yeah, I was not, I didn't see that coming.
When it comes to getting the color right in rosé. Rosé, obviously this kind of delicate balance between you don't want it too light, don't want it too heavy, and the color is kind of indicative of that. And this, these grapes tend to have a lot of color in them naturally, and so we, as these Carignan grapes come into the winery, they go right into the press. They get one rotation and then they get pressed off immediately, and that's enough to give it this, really beautiful little pink
Well,
hue.
and in fact, as you may remember this year, the color was too strong. And so even as we were starting to press it, we were getting too much color. So we cut off the pressing and about halfway. So we're going to have less rosé this year. But the color, I really feel like we nailed it this year. And we don't normally talk about, our reds are reds and our whites are whites, but our rosé, now that takes a little bit of extra effort.
It is really kind of an intent. The rosé typically gets picked right around the time that we're picking Zinfandel, finishing up the last of the Sauvignon Blanc, we're picking Chardonnay. It's actually a very, very busy time of the harvest. And we go all the way up to Mendocino for this.
Yeah, you got to see a picture of this vineyard, the Rossetti family vineyard. It's really a treasured place. This is the only wine that we make from not Napa grapes, and one of only two wines that we make from grapes we don't grow ourselves. But Rory, you found this vineyard. You turned me on to it when we were looking to make a little beautiful rosé. And traditionally, this variety Carignan is just perfect for rosé because it carries such high acidity.
Yeah.
And so when we found this beautiful vineyard, the Rossetti family has been there since
the 1930s. And so
Yeah.
this is a vineyard that was planted right around 1939, 1940. Beautiful old Carignan vines, farmed by the same family. So Frank Rossetti, the father of Tom Rossetti, who he and his wife Pam farm the vineyard even to this day. And when I say farm, they're the ones doing the work out there. And I had been up in Mendocino buying grapes for my own project for a few years, and I was driving by this beautiful vineyard almost every time I went up there. And so it was kind of this head turner of a vineyard. Every time I drive past, I go, man, I wonder who owns that place. So finally, I just knocked on the door and said hello, introduced myself, and said, hey, I'd love to buy some of your grapes I think they'd be perfect for our rosé program. And it's those kinds of connections in the wine world that just come serendipitously. And the Rossettis now have been a part of our extended family with the winery now for 6 years. And so we're very excited to feature, I think for the first time in the 2020 is the first time that this has been exclusively fruit from the Rossetti vineyards. This is 100% Carignan from the Rossetti vineyard, picked from select areas. We've now become pretty familiar with the vineyard, and you can see one of the old Carignan vines here, over 70 years old. And so when they
not that that's particularly old, now that I think about it.
Yes, Dad. Sorry. So when Carignan gets this old, they get tremendous color, they get tremendous flavor, they get tremendous character. And what's kind of funny is that rosé, you often think about it being this hey, it's the pool wine, you know,
Right.
you don't need to have that much character to it.
Yeah.
But we kind of take chart a different course with that in a way, where we're saying, hey, we want, you know, great rosé starts with great grapes the same way that great Cabernet starts with great
We've said
grapes.
this 100 times. We drink more of this wine than anybody else, and so look, we're going to make it
We
good.
challenge you to beat our record, actually.
So, well, there we go. The rosé, it's just beautiful. Finished off nicely this year. So I was mentioning that it was starting to get too deep into color, so we cut off the pressing, and we had all this juice left in the grapes. So we actually had to dump that out of the press, and then we ran it up into a tank. And so we're gonna have a little red care again from those
We'll see how
grapes.
that turns out.
Well, it'll be for my home consumption if nothing else.
Exactly.
So there we go.
So it's,
Yeah.
you know, the rosé we love. We hope you guys love it. We love making it. As many of you know, the rosé started as kind of an avenue for some of our Napa Gamay grapes that we grow at our Rossi vineyard. And most of those grapes are now going into the Heritage Blend. And we actually did make a little bit of a varietal Napa Gamay in 2020.
Yes, you told me about this.
So
and
I
you
think
stuck
that
in. I wasn't
it still needs
watching
to go
when
in the
you did.
bottle. That might be a winery only, so just a little incentive to come visit us here at the winery, tasting some of the oldest vines that we own as a part of Frog Sleep.
So I just hope you appreciate that this is not just a off the shelf chug it down rosé. This is a serious wine.
Not just that. I
Well,
suppose.
it's okay to do that, but I mean, this is a serious wine. It really
Yeah.
is. This is reflects these beautiful grapes and the quality farming that the Rossetti's put into it.
So
it's really a pleasure to deal with them.
Organically farmed, dry farmed. It ticked a lot of the boxes about what we love about farming. And so the Rossettis are they're just real. And in a, you know, sometimes you can feel a little bit unreal in the wine world, and the Rossettis have it all. They're real farmers, and it's a pleasure working with them, and love buying their grapes. And Dad, yeah, it is in the sense to the extent that we take anything seriously, we take our rosé seriously, because we want it to give pleasure and be. Yeah, well,
This could be perfect for Valentine's Day.
yeah, next year.
Oh, it's already past
Did you
Valentine's
miss Valentine's Day again?
I'm in trouble.
Goodness.
Easter.
Exactly.
Wonderful.
Well done.
Yes, I know you want some red wine.
I want some red wine too.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to keep this rosé in front of me as well.
I'm going to have mine right by my side here, that's for sure. What are we going to do? We're going to do some Zinfandel next?
Let's do a little Zinfandel.
Yeah. So this is a special thing too, and you know, here's our trick here that we're doing, you guys. We're getting you to drink up all your, well, I did a nice job of pouring that, didn't
Yeah,
I?
you're a real pro here.
Yeah,
Spilling wine all over the place.
We need a sommelier. We're getting you to drink up your shipment, so you have to order more. How's it working out? You know, I think this is great. But this is a special bottling from the Molinari Vineyard, a very special block, the Cuneo block, and we're going to have you talk about that in a second. But I just want to let you guys know why we do these special lots. They're more than just an exercise of fun. This is how we get to know these blocks ourselves. So I guess in effect, we're using these guys as guinea pigs to a certain extent, right?
Yeah, it is. It's so maybe Dad, probably in order is just a little bit of explanation of what Cuneo block or Cuneo block or Cuneo block even means.
Yeah.
Zinfandel, you know, is a variety that's not, although it's not indigenous to California, it's really California's heritage grape.
God, did you try this?
Yeah, I have multiple times actually. Do
No,
you remember
no,
we
I
actually
mean,
picked this wine out? You know?
It's aged a little bit since last week, though.
It's and Zinfandel, for that reason, because it's been around California for so long, you can go to different corners of the state and find these very, very old Zinfandel vineyards, and it's one of the coolest things about California. And on those old vineyards, because they've had time to kind of adapt and change over time, a lot of them have what are considered their own clones. And so, you know, in the same way that you talk about Chardonnay clones or Pinot Noir clones, we think about Zinfandel clones in terms of their original vineyard. And so the Cuneo vineyard is over in Dry Creek Valley. It's planted in pre-Prohibition, some of the oldest vines in the Dry Creek Valley. And when we were talking with the Molinari family about planting their vineyard, we suggested, hey, why don't we go source some budwood, some clonal material from.
You didn't actually go get the vines. You got.
Yeah,
the
no, they wouldn't let us actually go grab the 100-year-old vines.
I think it's worth explaining
Turns out
that.
they're not real cool with that. But they did allow us to go in there and select some budwood from that vineyard. And part of the Molinari vineyard was grafted over to budwood, original clonal wood from the Cuneo that came out of the Cuneo vineyard. And what that's going to give, the differences between Cuneo block and Hain block and Dickerson block and Baldocci block, these are all the names of old Zinfandel vineyards. The differences are pretty subtle, but we kind of deal with subtleties when it comes to winemaking.
This has got a lot of subtlety, that's for sure.
It's part of the reason that we go through the steps. We don't bottle all of these different blocks separately. We just did this one special one for 2019. But Cuneo, sitting in probably the Molinari vineyard in general, has a lot of gravel in the soil. It's probably our most gravelly soils that we help to farm. This is right in the kind of alluvial fan of St. Helena. I think the Cuneo block probably has the highest proportion of that gravel in the soil, and it's just a small block. But Cuneo seems to kind of find this balance between power and finesse. And so what I mean by that with Zinfandel is, when you have a pure power, it's, really ripe fruit and just kind of in your face, a little extra juice to it. You can also go the other direction and be kind of high tone and red fruited. The Cuneo block, especially in 2019, just hit that balance perfectly, where it's powerful, it's dense, it's deep, it's dark fruited, but it also has this beautiful tannin and a beautiful acidity to it that just, Dad, this was something we tasted just a few months in barrel, and we were like, there it is, that's the Frogfellow one.
Well, and I think that bears a little explanation that when we do our blend tastings, we're always looking out for, there's only a handful of barrels, we're always looking out for that one wine saying, well, not only is that really interesting to us, but we want to share that with our Frogfellows. And so that's what these blocks are. And you're the only people in the world that get to try these wines. So it's exceptional. And it's a lot of fun for us, and hopefully it's a lot of fun for y'all as well. And this is a spectacular wine, by the way.
And it really is, and it's.
I would give this 100 points.
I would give this 101 points.
Oh,
we're busting the scale on this. Gary, you had a question prior to us doing this seminar about what are the nuances of Cuneo block. I talked a little bit about that, but it even goes beyond that, where this section of the vineyard doesn't set very heavily.
Well, we get peas and pumpkins in this too, don't we?
We do get a little bit of that, not to the extent that we do in Dickerson, which is the block right next door. But Cuneo has a little bit of that. It's not super even, but it's not kind of too crazy with the differences in the berry size. And so that's all going to affect I talk about this sometimes, Deb, when we talk about vineyard work, kind of seeming banal sometimes, but really I think in 19 we nailed the balance of just getting enough sunlight on these grapes to allow them to kind of develop and develop beautifully. And Cuneo block needs a little bit of a touch, but not too much.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the vintage, because everyone's kind of starting to drink the 18s now. They're just, because this is one of the first 19s out. Yeah. And when 18 was such a spectacular vintage, I don't think there was a lot of slippage in 19. I think it was back to back really nice vintages.
No, right? I think especially in the Zinfandels, the 18 Zinfandel is just. For me, it's like that pure distillation of joy.
Yeah, it's hedonistic,
and it's just absolutely wide open, and it's going to drink extremely well for many, many years. I think the 19s are, and I think this is a perfect example of it. It's a little more power to it, a little more, maybe a little bit more density, probably a little less open right away. But man, 18 and 19 are just going to be fabulous vintages for a very, very long time. And I think this, to me, I don't know what you're getting flavors wise, but to me, it's got that dark fruit, and it has a little bit of the minerality as well. It's got some of that, you're tasting nice some of that gravel in this wine.
Yeah. Delightful. God, in a few years, this is going to be spectacular. You guys, I may have to put a little bit more of this in the cellar than I already have.
You mean we're not going to drink it all at once?
We'll give it our best effort, but probably not. No. So Zinfandel, it's been a lot of years we've been making Zinfandel. You guys realize that we were talking about this the other day? We're 9 years away from celebrating our 50th anniversary. I guess the best way to say that, it's going to be our 41st year.
That's another way of saying it. There are lots of ways around that, actually.
Yeah, but in 50 years, that's pretty serious stuff. And we've been making Zinfandel since 81. We skipped a couple vintages, but
making it since the very beginning, the Molinari family has been a part of the Frog's Leap story for many, many years. We've been helping the Molinari, Pete Molinari's, helping various generations of peat Molinaris, actually.
Yeah, we're now on our fourth generation of Molinaris that I've had to deal with.
Although there's a little one now, Pete the Fifth, who's not quite talking yet, I don't think, but is gonna probably join the family pretty quick. But the Molinari family have been a part of the Frog's Leap story for many years, and we helped them plant their vineyard. We've been helping them to farm the vineyard this whole time, and so it's, when we talk about Frog's Leap being a family winery, I often think about it being this multi-generational winery. And you can see in the photo here, that's the old Molinari, the barn in the background, this is the Molinari vineyard. The barn in the background is the old Molinari winery.
And by the way, if you want to visit this vineyard, you should probably talk to them first. But I mean, you literally can walk from downtown St. Helena about 5 or 6 blocks and be in this vineyard. It's right in the center of town.
It really is. It's wedged between
southeast corner of St. Helena.
Yeah, it's wedged between the high school and the Montessori school, and right in the center of town, right part of the city's limits of St. Helena. But just a really fabulous vineyard, and the Molinaris are a grape growing family, and we pride ourselves on our relationships with these grape growing families, like the Molinaris, who grow organically for us, dry farm for us, and so it's these kinds of vineyards, I think, are often hidden in plain sight. If you drove down Highway 29 in St. Helena, you wouldn't notice this vineyard right away, but it's never far from it. And I think that's a lesson for Napa, where there's a lot of cool stuff in Napa that's just a little bit off the beaten path.
Yeah. Now it's got a little Petite Syrah in it.
It does, yeah. The Molinari vineyard does have a little bit of Petite Syrah planted to it, and so this is co-fermented with the Petite Syrah from that,
which is just right
next door.
Right next door.
Yeah.
Well, there's the Baldolce block in between.
Baldolce block in between, but
I
it's
want to be technical.
that's for many of you guys know about the way we make our Zinfandel in general is with every single lot of Zinfandel that we have is co-fermented with Petite Syrah. And in the case of the Molinari vineyard, it is planted right there in the same vineyard. Does extremely well in the same type of soils.
Picked it the same day.
Zinfandel harvest it's always a bit of a rodeo with picking Zinfandel, because Zinfandel picks so fast. And so we 2019 started at 6 o'clock in the morning, and you go hard for about 4 hours, and you get half the vineyard picked at once.
Now that's later than we usually start. So the Zinfandels we wait till 6 o'clock in the morning, whereas the whites we start.
We do night picking with the white grapes. Zinfandel, especially in 2019, we were able to pick.
So I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit.
Okay.
This is 14.5% alcohol, which is high for a Frog's Leap Zinfandel. You've been, I'm the 13.8 guy, and I took a little bit of tricks to get there. You're allowing a little bit more natural expression of the Zinfandel. You're not apologetic about that at all.
I'm not. I think, especially in the case of Molinari,
I think you need to apologize.
I'm not going to. I apologize for my dad here. The Molinari vineyard is typically a little bit riper than the Zinfandel, and that's true, I would say, year in and year out. The White Barn vineyard, or the Garden vineyard, which is the primary source of our Zinfandel, there's about 60 to 70% of the Zinfandel that you taste, the 2018 Zinfandel that hopefully is in another glass right next to you right now, is going to come from the White Barn vineyard, which typically does come in at that below 14% alcohol range. And so that tends to bring down the alcohol. When we pick the Galerin Petite Syrah that gets co-fermented, and the Leeds Petite Syrah that gets co-fermented into the Zinfandel, those are picked at lower sugar levels, and that tends to bring the overall blend down a little bit. But Molinari it seems to be just
because
right.
They're together, the alcohol goes up just a little bit.
Well, I think it's
this is not out of balance with alcohol.
No, I mean, and I think that a lot of what goes into what we did, we don't pick on numbers really. Sometimes you'll hear about, well, we pick at 24 bricks, or we pick at 27 bricks, or we pick at a number, and that's kind of it's a kind of dogmatism to the way that one could pick grapes, and it's a lot easier to think about it that way, right? Because hey, you just wait until the numbers say it's ready, and then you just go pick it. But that kind of strips away a little bit of, I guess, self-doubt. But for us, it's really, my dad and I and Frank Leeds, our longtime vineyard manager, we're the three that go out and taste these grapes and make all of the picking calls. It's not we're not sending interns out there and getting a number back and saying, well, let me check the slide rule here and see if it's time to pick. For us, it's about flavor, and I think.
Well, in this case, a lot of Zinfandels that you were talking about the other day, it's a lot about texture too. We can actually feel when these grapes are ripe.
You taught me that it's actually with Zinfandel, I think about it as sound in your mouth, and so which sound is one thing you don't often. Although we were happy to hear the sound of
once we got the right end of the bottle.
Yeah, once we got the right end of the bottle. Zinfandel, when it's perfectly ripe, it loses a little bit of its turgidity, and the skin of the grape just adds a little bit of snap to it. And so when the grape gets in your mouth and we're biting into it, yeah, it has that snap or that crunch to it. And that's when we say, hey,
well, and we have about a 2-day window at that point at best.
So yeah, then the alarm bells go off, and it's like, oh God, we're trying to pick them all right.
It's like a fire truck.
We were just picking Sauvignon Blanc a second ago.
No, we're out of there.
Zinfandel is a very compact part of the harvest. Sauvignon Blanc tends to extend out. Chardonnay extends out. Merlot, Cabernet, all of those are fairly extended harvests. But Zinfandel it can be less than a week. Really crazy year, it'll be less than a week of picking, whereas Cabernet will go on for a month and a half. And so it's a pretty crazy time of year, but Zinfandel is that, its perfect moment of ripeness is that ephemeral. It comes, and then if you wait a few days, you get a hot day, and all of a sudden you've lost it. You've lost that window. And so,
hey, someone wrote in and said, "Oh, how come you're using all your Petit Syrah and the Zinfandel, and when are we going to have another one?" And I think the answer is we're making just a small lot of Petit Syrah this year, right? But it's been a long time since we've had Petit Syrah to bottle because we needed. That block has been diminished as we partly when we did the river restoration down at Gallerin, but you're replanting part of that block as well, and so. We only had enough Petit Syrah the last few years to make our Zinfandel perfect, and so we haven't been able to bottle a Petit Syrah. But we're doing just a little bottling this year. I don't know
doing a little bottling, and actually, it's not from Gallerin in 2020. It's going to be a small portion from the Chavez Leeds Vineyard, which this is actually the Leeds and Pesh block there. But it's this head train vineyard that was planted about 12 years ago, and so planted after the 06 Petit Syrah that you enjoyed, and planted not long before we stopped making a varietal Petit Syrah. And it's taken, I think, that amount of time. These grapes are now fully mature, beautiful head train Petit Syrah. And in 2020, we did make a small amount, just 100 cases. It's similar amount of the amount of Napa Gamay. All of a sudden, you can thank yourselves, actually, thank the fellowship for allowing us to make all these kind of crazy wines, Napa Gamay.
Well, it's true because quite honestly, when we first bottled a Petit Syrah, it wasn't a popular wine, and we struggled selling it, and so there was a lot of incentive to go. And then as soon as we stopped making it, everyone in the world wanted to have it. It's usually the way it is. So a little bit of Petit Syrah coming to a fellowship near you soon.
As in like 100 cases. So it's not much out there, but I'm sure the team will help keep you informed about that. But Petit Syrah is a misunderstood grape. We include it in our Zinfandels because Zinfandel, naturally as it is a very low color, low tannin, actually a little bit lower acid kind of grape. And Petit Syrah has lots of color, lots of tannin, plenty of acidity. And so it's a perfect complement for Zinfandel. And, Zinfandel tends to assimilate the flavors of Petit Syrah very, very well. Petit Syrah is, for me, properly, it's black and blue fruit, but also some floral, some spice, has a lot of nuance to it. That nuance is difficult to achieve with Petit Syrah because it is such a heavily tannic wine.
And I think people think of it as a big wine, and so they put that. Oh, thank you. Yeah. They put that extra bigness on it, and I don't think that's what it works with Petit Syrah. It's a delicate variety.
It's so tempting in winemaking to just add a bunch of window dress into the wine and say, well, it needs this, and you treat it like cooking or something, where you just add a little bit of this, add a little new oak, add a little extra extraction. And Petit Syrah especially wants you to kind of pull back and say, wait a second, this needs a much gentler touch. And so Petit Syrah is actually sitting not in barrel right now. It's actually in concrete cube, taking away, basically trying to strip away some of the elements. And the way that it plays in things like the Molinari Cuneo block is, it tends to just support and lift up the wine and add some of that color and tannin that it plays really well with the essence of Zinfandel, which is this kind of
You know,
beautiful.
Kevin's asking whether this slightly higher alcohol content is going to make a difference in terms of the way these wines age. Honestly, I think, Kevin, the truth of the matter is that the difference here is so minute. I mean, if you get into the big, I mean, a lot of Zinfandels these days are 15.5, 16%, although there, people are moderating that a little bit, mainly because they're finding those wines don't age. You know, I'll go back to what I've said so many times that everyone groans when I say it, but you know, when I started collecting wines to age them, I made the classic mistake. We would taste wines like this that were balanced and wonderful and so knitted together, and we'd go, "Oh my God, that's lovely. We should probably drink it right away." And then we'd get one of these big alcoholic, hairy monsters, you know, that was just, oh my God, yeah, you know, they'd be so big, and we'd say, I bet that'll be good in 20 years. And no, as it turns out, I made a mistake collecting those wines. It turns out wines are like people. If you're ugly when you're young, you're going to be ugly when you're old. And it's a valuable lesson to learn, and we laugh about it, but the ability of a wine to age has to start with that wine being balanced from the very beginning.
The balance is the key, and I think that, you know, when questions about alcohol, really it comes down to how balanced is this wine. If it's in balance right now, you're going to be able to enjoy this wine for 20, 30 years easily. It'll change over time. You know, we don't have our monocles where we could talk about aged Zinfandel getting claret, like, you know, we got to put in a monocle.
Yeah,
Monocle every time we say the word.
I lost my monocle.
I know.
Yeah.
I was wearing it every day. I don't know what happened. But it's, you know, I think that the 14.5 versus 13.8 versus all that is, you're really kind of in this window where we're really looking at natural acidity in the wine and making our decisions based not so much off of trying to hit a specific alcohol number, but instead, you know, when is this wine balanced? And that can go down a slippery slope where you go, wow, 17% alcohol and it's balanced. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, that's much harder to do. But we, you know, for us, especially with the way that this vineyard tends to ripen and tends to develop, Molinari wants a little bit of extra time on the vine. It's always picked after White Barn. I can't think of a year when we picked it before. And so it's just.
I could think of a year we should have probably picked it.
Maybe, yeah.
There we go.
Anyway,
hey,
yeah.
you know, any question of any talk about the 19 and the 18 vintage, the beautiful two vintages, raises the question, and we've seen it come across the screen from Amber, and that's 2020. This incredibly in the news vintage with all the wildfires last year that devastated so many of our friends lost their wineries, so many vineyards were affected, so many wines are not going to be made in the 2020 vintage. We were extremely lucky. You know, how do you explain this?
Lucky is the word. We were not affected directly by the fires in 2020. That the nuances of smoke and you know, fire doesn't have a lot of nuance to it, but smoke does. And so the effects of how that work out tend to be functions of time and place, and not necessarily anything we do or we don't do. So it's, you know, 2020 is a difficult vintage to talk about. It's in our preliminary tastings, we're very, very happy with our wines. Actually, especially the Merlots. Speaking of Merlot, the 2020 Merlots I think are going to be fabulous. But that's, you know, it's a difficult thing to talk about at this stage, just because the memory, like in 2017, is so fresh of, a difficult harvest. It was a difficult harvest to begin with. It was already hot, crazy thunderstorms and lightning lightning fires early in the season, early in the harvest season, and then you know, obviously the total insanity at the very end there.
I think it's made us ever more aware of climate change and the effect of climate change on our vineyards and our world, on our planet, on all of our lives eventually, I can assure you. And it would be a whole nother seminar. We don't have time today, but we've redoubled our efforts here to see not only what we can do to mitigate the effects of climate change, but what we can do to, as a winery, as a business, to stop the growth of the warming temperatures of our carbon footprint. And even in the vineyard, we're talking about what can we do as a winery to reverse the effects of climate change by getting more carbon into our soils, into our vines, and through this process of regenerating farm. You know, organic farming is so much about if you take from the soil, you must return to the soil in equal measure. well, we can actually add back to the soil more than we take, this idea of regenerative agriculture, and in the process, fix carbon into our soils. Agriculture has got a great role to play in the fight of reversing climate change, and we intend to be a big part of that.
Yeah. It's I think the lasting effect of 2020 is going to be not a necessarily a reality check, but for us, yeah, it was redouble our efforts. And so we're now 2 months into an exhaustive greenhouse gas inventory of the winery. So doing things like digging up every single glass, cork, capsule, and actually case sticker invoice we've ever had, figuring out how much every sticker, every label, every cork, every glass bottle weighs, figuring out where it came from, how it was made,
even the packaging that we send the wine to you all in has all got to be analyzed, and what can we do to reduce that?
Travel to go.
We're certainly going to implore you to do your part and recycle those, and weight of bottles turns out to be huge.
And so for us, it's we've been thinking about this for a long time, and really 2020 was a way of galvanizing that effort and saying, you know what, now's the time. And so we're it's not about having to kind of discuss it anymore. It's more just like, hey, let's just do it.
Enough of the talk. Let's get to work. Hey, get to work. Let's talk about this wine.
Speaking of get to work, let's drink some wine.
Yeah, we have to drink some more wine.
I love this wine.
And this is our 2018 Merlot. And have we been on a roll with Merlot lately, or what? Our Merlots are just going from hit to hit to hit to hit. Congratulations, for absorbing all the knowledge I sent your way. And
You're welcome for perfecting the knowledge that the imperfect knowledge that you sent me. The Merlot has just been on a total roll lately. The 18, I think, is absolutely fabulous. This is I think this is actually exclusively from our estate vineyards in 2018. And really the star of the show here is our home vineyard here at the winery. It's the Red Barn Merlot, which when you come to the winery and you drive into the driveway, you're going to be surrounded by.
We have a picture of the Red Barn on overview. Maybe we can you can point out where the vineyard is in here.
Point out the vineyard's right over there, actually.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
I don't think we could turn the camera around and see it. So you can see the overhead of the winery here. The vines that are
in the background there,
right around the winery are Cabernet Sauvignon, but on the further side of that, towards the kind of corner, is the Merlot, and that's the source of most of what's in your glass right now. And that block has got 5 different clones. It's got a bunch of different rootstocks. The soil type changes dramatically over the course of that block, getting increasing proportions of clay. And it's taken I'll say this, Dad, it's taken me a long time to figure out, hey, what's the proper crop load level for every different section of the vineyard. So these get 5 or 6 different kinds of thinning treatments across the whole block, and we're really dialing it in that sense, where it's not just, hey, it's the Red Barn Merlot. It's the Red Barn Merlot, the first 12 rows of the West Clone 3, going through and dialing in every single element there.
Well, and these vines are getting older, which helps a little bit. Merlot is one of those varieties where it's not Grand Cru unless it's 20 years old, right?
Well, and 2018 would have been their 20th year of existence, and I think it's taken that long for these vines to really hit their stride. And for me, Dad, it shows up mostly in the texture. I love the texture of the Merlot.
I hope you guys are getting this wine. This is tremendous.
And really Merlot, we've talked about this before, I think, about not thinking about Merlot as Cabernet with training wheels, where it's, Merlot is its own thing and really does its own thing extremely well, which it has this kind of red fruit and, dried herb component to the aromatics, but it's that suppleness of the texture.
Was it 2018 we were standing in the heart of Palmerall with Christian, or was that 19?
2019, yeah.
2019, yeah.
Just thinking about, the nuances that Merlot can bring to it. And Merlot is, because it was so ubiquitous back in the day, pre-sideways and all of that stuff, I think sometimes the conversation loses a little bit of what the nuances of Merlot. So there's actually a question about what a clone is, which various pop culture references to clones and things like that. But basically, grapevines are like apples, or like lots of different types of fruit, where you can't just take a grape seed and plant it into the ground.
The seeds are not true.
The seeds are not true to the variety. So for example, if you went to the grocery store and got a Fuji apple, and you put that Fuji apple into the ground and said, I'm going to get an apple tree. You might get an apple tree, but you won't get a Fuji apple tree. The seeds are not true to their parent material. And so grapes are the same way. If you take a Cabernet Sauvignon grape and put it into the ground, you're not going to get Cabernet Sauvignon. You're going to get something different.
Can you explain why genetically that?
I could, but let's get started let's start a breakout session on genomics, but maybe not. But basically, grapevines are propagated by grafting, the same way that apples are. And so when you take grafting material like that, you're taking exact genetic copies, or in other words, clones of whatever you're grafting from. And so that's the way.
Well, you say they're identical, but there can be very subtle nuances in these clones, and that's why the clones, even though their DNA is similar, they can have, even though they were done by grafting, they can have small differences. Correct?
It sounds like it's been a while since you've taken a biochemistry course.
A genetics class, that's for sure. That was after I graduated from college. They discovered DNA. Just
I thought there was electricity.
Watson and Crick were in my class.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think they discovered the wheel right after, right while he was there.
Why do I do these? I don't need this abuse.
I couldn't make you do that. So clones are exact kind of, if you take a cutting of a particular block and you try and graft it into another vineyard, it's going to be an exact genetic copy, but that source material is kind of the big question. And as over time, vines will develop their own characteristics. They'll mutate slowly. They'll adapt to their environment, and you'll get different sources of this clonal material. And so they can come from different vineyards. They can come from different countries, even. Difference when you really get down into the nitty gritty, it's a true rabbit hole to get down in terms of what the clonal material is. And the differences are always very, very subtle. But, for winemakers, we deal in subtleties. And so there are a couple different clones of Merlot at the winery.
Speaking of subtleties, this is a great Merlot. We had a question about how these age and whether the 93, for example, would still be, if it's still in your cellar, whether it's too long. And I thought the question was great because I'd actually poured the 93 Merlot at the Boston Harbor Wine Festival, my first outing of the year, back with my friend Daniel Bruce, and we served the 93 with dinner, and it was spectacular. So the answer is no, it's just getting started with almost 20 years of 20 some years.
Those early 90 Merlots are just absolutely fabulous. 92, 91, 92, 93 Merlot are all just absolutely fabulous right now.
Again, cellar them properly. That's the only thing we can advise. These have got to be taken care of.
The only sense in that it's been cellared too long is that you haven't drunk it yet and bought another one.
That's right.
Another question, will we share some of the results of the greenhouse gas audit? I think we're going to do more than share it. What we'll do is you'll see and hopefully see some of the reasoning behind some real changes, whether our bottles get lighter, what kind of changes do we make that can help us best address some of the.
Well, and let us know.
What's the biggest impact we can have?
Well, I think let us know if there are a number of you interested in actually having a sit-down seminar to talk about what went into this audit and how we measure it, and what the challenges are of the industry, what we can do as a winery, but what it needs to be as a society, how you can make a difference in that. We could easily spend an hour spending time talking about greenhouse gases if there are enough of you interested. So let us know.
We did have another question about whether we'll be having a peach festival this year.
Oh gosh, the peaches are blooming right now. They're so beautiful.
And it was terrible last year. We had all these peaches and we didn't have a peach festival. So we were sitting there with a bunch of peaches.
We sure hope to have a peach festival this year. You just need to stay tuned, get your vaccine, and stay tuned. It's still, I think, do we have a date on the calendar, Jessica, tentative? We don't even have a date on the calendar yet, you guys. We're just taking this kind of as it comes to us. But your fellow guides, Megan and Nick and Nathan and Chelsea, they'll let you know as soon as we can, as soon as we can commit, as soon as we know ourselves. We just don't know even what the legality of
And basically,
gatherings is
you
gonna
guys are going to be the ones who know first.
Yeah.
So we
Well, let the speakers know.
we are loath to miss an opportunity to throw a party. We'll
Yeah,
put it that
it's
way.
been, yeah.
So if we can throw a party, we're going to do it.
We're in a party deficit at
we
this
are
point.
we are seriously party deficient right now, as we imagine all of you are. So we're looking to we're going to try to have that festival and hopefully debut a couple of cool wines for you all. But yes, get your vaccine and hopefully we can welcome everybody here.
You know, it's a question I get asked a lot, and it came up is what's my favorite wine that we make, and you know, I think the story I tell about this is it's your favorite wine tends to be the one that needs the most love. It's kind of like your favorite kid has got to be the one that's giving you the most trouble, and you got to give extra love to, which has usually been Rory, by the way.
I got some new material for my therapist now.
Yeah. But you know, Merlot is a very difficult grape to grow. It's a very difficult wine to make. Actually, it requires a great deal of subtlety in the cellar, and it's almost impossible to sell, or was for a number of years. So how couldn't it be your favorite? It's like trouble, no matter every time you turn around with it. And so we love our Merlots. We love all of our wines.
Well,
really.
and you know, to actually answer your question, at least from my perspective, on that lines, it'd be the 2011 version of this Merlot. For me, is one of the most surprising wines we ever made. Where when that wine went into the bottle, it was sort of like
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Basically, it was 11 was a very, very cool growing year. Merlot is very sensitive to those cool temperatures, and you know, when it came out, I hope you're getting with the 18, you're getting like a little touch of like sage and menthol on the nose. Well, in 11, when that first set out, it was pretty green. And not that we shy away from green flavors in our wines, but the 11 was pretty green when it first came out, and we weren't real sure where it was going to go. I tasted that wine blind 2 years after we released it, and it had just completely transformed. Or I don't know if it transformed or if I'd never really seen it properly. It was I was tasting with a bunch of other winemakers, and it was the favorite wine of the night. Tasted all blind. It tasted like just one of the most nuanced, kind of very light on its feet, but very, very complex and very beautifully intense. And the 11 Merlot is just one of those wines that, like.
Hey Jessica, let's put and Megan, let's put 2 cases of 11 Merlot up on the site to sell, or let people know, and see if we can. Anyone who wants to try a bottle of that, we'll have it. We'll find a way to communicate just for you who are listening today, right? Can we do that? All right, it's done. Look at that. Yeah, we'll find out how good it is.
Yeah, I mean, it was a wine that was kind of like, for me, it was.
Charged big bucks for that, by the way.
Yeah. But you run into this sometimes where you run into this all the time where you think you know everything about winemaking, and then you tell me I don't. No, and then you get surprised by a wine, and wine is constantly revealing, and so it's revealing different aspects of truth to you at different times, and you sometimes you get a shocker, and the 11 Merlot was a shocker for me. So.
Well, and I think what Rory's developing is something that has been something I've always appreciated about wines, and that's that wines start to develop stories around them. You remember a specific time you had that wine, or specific friends, or some difficulties you had with that vintage, or something that happened in that year that was dramatic. We'll certainly remember the wines of 2020 with all the COVID and the wildfires. All those bottles will be precious the rest of our lives. So the wines develop stories, and you'll find this about certain bottles. If you have enough of them in your cellar, that you'll remember the last time you had it, and what you had with it, and what friends were over, and they start to be associated with memories. And that's a great part of wine drinking, I think. And they become almost liquid time capsules in that respect, and it's really fun to think of them that way. So develop your own stories, and we'll certainly add to our stories to yours, and see how it goes. There's been enough storylines of late, that's for sure.
Yeah. And it's wine doesn't. I guess it comes down to that. Where sometimes we're thinking about these wines and thinking, hey, it's got red fruit, it's got this kind of note and all that. Sometimes we'll go down that route, but honestly, winemaker notes are some of the hardest things for us to write, because we don't often think about them, and we think about them in terms of stories and in terms of what we remember out of the year, the rhythm of that year, and how the picks evolved, and how the summer was with the summer crazy hot.
Well, and that's why we like doing this, is that we can start to share some of the stories that we share when when we think about these wines, and we come hoping you add those to your memories. There was a question about we're not really using the concrete so much in the cab and the Merlot program. It's really been in the Zinfandel. Now we're kind of extending concrete into a lot of the white work as well. Do you see us using more concrete with?
We might
I think maybe with Merlot.
We might experiment with a little bit of Merlot, with a specific block and clone that's responded well to some of the concrete, but not a high amount, not to the same degree that Zinfandel, which including the Molinari that you guys tasted, is over 50% concrete aged, and I think that for me is just super appropriate for the character of Zinfandel. Merlot is much more subtle, where there are a few grapes that respond well to the concrete, but for me, mostly Merlot is about barrel work, and it's about cooper selections and forest selections, grain and toasting selections. Oh my God, a whole rabbit hole of minutia about winemaking. Some of it American oak, I think mostly French oak on our Merlot. There's one block that does okay with a little bit of Merlot, with a little bit of American oak, but most of it is about these kind of very lightly toasted French oak barrels from specific forests, from Nevers and from Allier, that play really, really well. And I have to be careful because Merlot is so subtle and so vintage dependent, where I'm often making changes to the barrel selections for individual lots as they come in, as I see things actually develop. And so for me, that's the work with any of the wines, but Merlot, that's the main work right now, is getting the right, primarily French oak onto the Merlot.
We're going to run out of time, but I did want to lift a glass very, very briefly, and thank you to Darren and Peggy, by the way, for reminding me of this. But a good friend of mine passed in the business this last week, Stephen Spurrier, who my fate and Stephen's have been linked a little bit, in that he, of course, was a big part of his legacy is that he organized the so-called Paris tasting that the 73 Cabernet Sauvignon from Stag's Leap became so famous in. And of course, most of you know I have a little bit of a history with that wine. So whenever Stag's Leap would have an anniversary, they would get all of us back together, and Stephen, of course, would have to come and be part of it. And my thought about Stephen is that his legacy is so much more than a tasting. And you think about your legacy, or you don't think about it all the time, but you think about someone's legacy, and Stephen's got so intertwined with this Paris tasting. I don't think there was actually what he considered to be his most important thing he ever did. And
I think you got a little bit conflated.
I feel the same way about Warren Winiarski, to be honest with you. He's forever going to be remembered for this one thing, and yet look how much more he did, and how much more he had to give, and how much he should be remembered for Ag Preserve and the Stag's Leap appellation and et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, it's always curious how you get remembered for one thing, but even when you've done so many. But he was a remarkable guy. So
he was a remarkable guy. And the Paris tasting that, I think, is mostly just an extension of Stephen's lifelong commitment to celebrating the unexpected, and to celebrating the kind of the crazy kids. Back in the 70s, California Cabernet makers were the crazy kids. Yeah. Trying to challenge the world. And Mr. Spurrier was always a celebrator of the unexpected, and the wine you were undervaluing, that you were underestimating. And so it was a lesson to us all to always go after, always appreciate the diversity in wine, and how great wine can be coming from unexpected places. We did have a question just for the wrap up. Are we planning on doing more of these tastings?
Are we planning on doing more of these?
Yeah, we are.
Hell yeah.
More day drinking.
As long as we can get all 12 of you to join us again, we will do it. And no, actually, we had a few more than that.
We had a few more than 12, yeah.
The next one we have coming on is actually
on the books already.
On the book for June 26th, which is I might still
be.
It's the
day after his 90th birthday. So we get to wish him a happy belated birthday. June 26th, Saturday, and you can see some of the future ones at fellowshipofthefrog.com.
Maybe I'll bring all the empty bottles of the great wines I drank on my birthday to show you guys the empty bottles the next day, including you, because you're with these kind of cracks, you're not going to be invited to my birthday.
Do they make bottles of Ovaltine and things like that now?
Look what I've done.
No, so we'll get a birthday cake out here. ensure on the, anyway, sorry, terrible jokes. But we'll have the birthday cake out here. We'll have a fire extinguisher right next to it, and we'll have some wines open for you as well.
The Rutherford Fire Department.
Yeah, we'll call them in. Chris, come on in. So please join us for that.
But in the
that
meantime,
session.
you guys, we are open. It is beautiful here. No one's in the valley right now, so if you can get away, and you should, and you got your vaccine, book a ticket and come on out and visit with us. We'd love to have you guys out here. You guys have been so important to us. I just say Bill and Jeannie are online. My dear Bill was my college roommate, fraternity brother at Cornell. We keep so many friendships going with you all. We really appreciate it. We need to see you out here. Yeah, it will be a party when you come, and we'll keep drinking and making wine.
Yep. And we're going to keep sharing it with you.
And we'll keep sharing it with you. You guys are the best. We appreciate you so very, very much. And I hope you enjoyed these wines as much as we did today. I think
They're pretty good.
Pretty darn good.
Good job, winemaker.
I think you're not too bad, winemaker. Take care,
Cheers,
you guys,
guys.
and we'll see you the next time.
All right.
All right.